A very good evening, everybody. A very warm welcome to another live webinar conducted at Club Faces. It's my absolute honor to introduce Speaker of the Day, Executive Chef, Director Food and Beverage, DPA, New York, Chef Ashfer Biju. It's a pleasure to have you, sir. Chef Ashfer, who today Chef Ashfer, who today oversees all outlets at DPR and with his team serve up to 5,000 people per day, started very young. He's been working at restaurants since he was just 16. He then started to travel around the globe to learn more and more and became what he considers a pre-opening specialist hotel with rebranding 7 hotels and developing
Shaitali, can you
roughly
mute everybody excepting speakers?
Chef Ashford is also an avid traveler and photographer. His interests also lie in foods that heal, Ayurveda, and medicinal cooking. To know him better, we'll soon see a short video to get a sneak peek into his life. But before that, I would request in charge IHM Bangalore, Deputy Director General, Regional Director of Tourism, Mr. Shreevats Sanjay, to address all the attendees today.
Hello, good morning and good evening both. Good morning because in New York it's getting morning.
Thank you.
Because here in India we have the evening time over here. But the most important thing is whether morning or evening, it has to be good. And very warm welcome to Chef Ashfer Biju at the Piers, Taj, New York. And Taj is something which every student of IHM aspires to be there. And more so a place like New York where you are, the Big Apple, as we all say. And because of you, I have selected the background as the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, as you can see. So, and I have fond memories of USA because once I was posted there in US from the Ministry of Tourism, Government of India. And this Taj, which has come up there, you may recall, you have one person from Taj, Miss Melinda. About 15 days back or a month back, we had one webinar for promoting Taj hotels, and she was there along with all Virtuoso members from US, which is one of the most prestigious ones in the United States as far as tour operators are concerned. But we are really very grateful to the chef who has spared his time to come over and motivate our students, because they all look towards you to become something like you one day. And it's a wonderful opportunity for all of us. All our students are here, our faculty are also here. And a very warm welcome to you once again. And thank you so much for sparing your time. Really very grateful, and won't be taking any more of your time. The time is all yours so that you proceed by addressing all the students and the faculty members. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Mr. Shreevats Sanjay. Thank you for your kind words.
It was genuine and from my heart.
Thank you.
Before starting, I'd like request Ms. Shaitali to project this short video.
Chaitali, are you there? I think we need to redo that.
What is industry one?
Ashwar, we would like to apologize for no audio for that
No,
particular,
don't worry.
to all the participants who have joined in us also. So before you start, I think a little bit from me. So the joy and satisfaction of a meal is equal to the passion and effort given to its preparation. These were the words said by one of the iconic British chef Gordon Ramsay. Ladies and gents, it's an honor to host one of our culinary superstar who created magical dishes and continue to create with passion, love, and dedication. Chef Ashfer Biju, Executive Chef, Director F&B, The Pier, New York. Ashfer, welcome once again. The floor is all yours now. We are looking forward to hear you all what you want to say to the young budding chefs, hoteliers, everyone.
Thank you, Anjali. I think you guys are too kind. And thank you for that video. I mean, that was unexpected. One superstar in there. I don't know if you noticed. That's my mom. The rest of the superstars don't matter, but that one superstar matters, right? How's everyone today? Don't answer because you're muted, right?
Thanks to the COVID, I think a lot of apprehensions in mind.
Good. So, when Anjali first started to talk to me about this, coming on this webinar, so I was wondering, what is that you guys want to hear? Or what is that you guys want to know? So I think one of the first things that Anjali asked me to touch on, which I will do very briefly, is my journey to
Sorry, Ashwar, I think. Okay, I think we can't hear you.
Okay, I think I was muted by the host.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay, sorry.
No, it doesn't matter. So see, we have to get used to the new arena of web meetings, so it's fine. Don't apologize. No, so I was saying that the one of the things I'm sure the students want to hear about is my journey. So I will make a brief introduction on what got me here, and obviously it really started exactly where you are today. Actually, my journey started a couple of years before your journey today. I was that kid, all of 16 years old, with an admission form of dental college in my hand. I was a science student, by the way. That dream of every parent to be a doctor and whatnot. But I did not want to be a dentist. So my journey started then when I took a bold decision at that time that this is not what I want to do. And I would then spend the next 2 years finding out what I want to do. That would take me to Chennai. And I worked in Chennai at the age of 16 for almost a year and a half in a restaurant. So my family actually belongs to the restaurant business, but my dad was very visionary. Dad basically said, if you work with me, you become an owner of the restaurant, but rather I'm going to give you an address and a name of my friend in Chennai, and you're going to go and work with him. So I ended up in Chennai, started working for my dad's friend in all kind of capacities: cook, cashier, server, cleaner. And that's when I figured out that this is exactly what I want to do in life. So that would take me to IHM Kovalam, where I met Anjali and Rajesh. So that kind of paved, that got me to where you are today. And then I was fortunate to be in the Oberoi School, or the OCLD as we call it today, the Oberoi Center for Learning and Development, which I would rate as one of the probably the best management schools in the world, not just in India. So I did that for 2 years. And then that took me to a couple of different projects. This was a time, very interesting time for hospitality in India. One of the iconic hotels got launched back in 1997, which was the Rajvilas in Jaipur. Now, to me, that's a very special hotel. It basically took Indian hospitality to a different level. It forced all our palaces, even the palaces that now is owned and operated by Taj, to relook at their operations. The Taj had to really come around and reposition all our palaces because of Rajvilas. So I was one of the fortunate ones to be picked to open that property in 1997. It took me to Amar Vilas, which is another iconic property in Agra of the Oberois. So I kind of made my mark as the opening assisting chef. That would take me to Maldives with Taj. So I switched companies back in 2002, and that is also the time when I left India. I worked in Maldives, Mauritius, a small stint in UK, Seychelles, and then eventually it got me to New York. In between, I did come back to India back in 2010 to open a very special property, which is Hyderabad, Falaknuma Palace. So interestingly enough, if you remember me saying my family is into restaurant business, or was into restaurant business, my dad owned and operated something like 12 restaurants in Hyderabad. So Hyderabad was very close to home in mind. So it was kind of coming back home, that project in Hyderabad. So I did that in 2010 and major part of 2011. And then since 2011, I've been in New York. So that's my journey.
So Ashwar, when we were in college, and we always looked up to you, because we had a lot of faculty telling us, okay, Ashwar is brilliant, excellent in kitchen. And when the placement season happened, OCLD and that kind of, you were already a superstar for all of us then. So that is something which...
there is no such thing as a superstar, Anjali. So the thing is, so let me tell you something. So all of my educational years, all of my, I wasn't a bad student. But I wasn't a top student at all. I barely managed to get good grades and whatnot. But what did happen is, when I ended up in IHM, two things happened. One, I realized that this is exactly my game. So I was in IHM because I wanted to be in IHM. That is one. Second thing is the atmosphere that the IHMs provide. I know a lot of you would probably laugh at what I'm going to say right now, but the opportunity that all of us had in IHM Kovalam was really, truly special. And I'm sure it is the same in most IHMs in India. The platform that is provided it's unmatched, and I've traveled in, you know, the one location that is known as the Mecca of hotel schools is Switzerland, and I've traveled extensively in Switzerland. I have actually done 3 culinary promotions in Switzerland, and I have been to some of the hotel schools in Switzerland. So I'm actually saying this after seeing that the platform that IHMs provide in India is amazing. Now, you may have, I mean, pardon me for saying this, but you may have 1 or 2 instructors that you don't really, who don't really cut the mustard for you. But for every one of them who don't, there is 3 of them who do. Okay, so the platform, so this platform and the fact that I was truly interested in hospitality, believe it or not, that really got me to immediately the first year of IHM, I topped the country.
Wow.
Myself.
That is what I said. You know, we always heard about you from all the faculty is one of the best of that particular batch. I'm sure we all of us perceive it the same way even now.
Thank you. That's being too kind.
No, that was one reason. And you know, when I was thinking about, I had in mind that yes, for sure you're going to be there as one of the speakers sometime for IHM Bangalore. So, Ashfer, you know, before getting when we were circulating all the registration forms, we had a set of questions which had come through. So, you know, I wanted you to go through that first before you kind of speak more about yourself and things like that. So, apart from your journey, one of the question was, if you were to pick 3 key elements for success, what would that be? I don't know whether there is a recipe for success. I'm sure it differs from person to person, individual to individual. However, you know, we would surely want to know what makes a successful chef.
True. So success itself is I would take happiness any day before success. Anyway, that's me. But that's a different discussion. But let's talk about success today. So if I were to pick 3 things for success, it's a difficult question because there are no 3 elements. There is probably 3 million elements, right? So you look at every day. Let's kind of look at what we do as hospitality professionals. What do? We don't really invent anything. We don't really create anything. We don't write code. We don't write programs. All we do is look at what our operations are. Our operations is basically an ecosystem of interactions which are quite day to day. So imagine it as somebody who comes to a place or a location. You get welcomed. You get told that this is probably your room for the day or for the week. You get escorted or you get shown to your room. You probably get fed meals, which is a common activity which all of us do 3 times, or sometimes some of us do 5 times a day. You get attended to your basic needs. Let's say if you need a computer to use, if you need a business center, etc., etc. You go about doing your day-to-day business or leisure, depending upon what you're there for. And finally, you get to put to bed, right? Somebody makes a bed for you, and then you sleep. So if you look at all these activities, what are they? They're all stuff that we do on a daily basis. So as hospitality professionals, what we do is we just add a little bit of style and panache to that activities, and we make that comfortable, and in some cases luxurious. That's our job. So all what we are doing is we're just taking a normal activity and making money out of it, literally. And when does that money happen? That money happens when the guest or the end receiver is not just happy but is elated, and the experience that exceeds their expectations. So how does that happen? That happens by observing, and that happens by learning from every single experience of your life, and prepare yourself for that learning which happens every day in your life, and then taking that to pleasing or exceeding expectations of a guest. So back to our 3 things question, you know. So if I were to pick up 3 things, that would be, one is curiosity. So, you know, you be curious at everything that you see, you don't see. and say, okay, you should be able to ask questions on why is it so and why it isn't so. You look at something and say, hey, is there a better way to do it? Or is there something that I do which will make it easier for the person who is experiencing it? So that curiosity is very important, not now, but forever. Even, you know, not just now, but forever. So even in your interactions with your colleagues, with your faculty, with when you go for your industrial training with your colleagues in the hotels, always be ready to ask that question, and don't be afraid to ask that question. You may have a chef or a manager who would probably get upset at the first question, but as long as you're able to make them understand where the question is coming from and why you are asking that question, you're asking the question genuinely to find out more, not just being a smartass. People will appreciate that and try to help you with answers. And you know that old saying, the one who will be successful is the one with the right questions, not with the right answers. So curiosity is probably top of my list. The second thing is focus. You have to have a focus on what you want to be, on where you want to be. You know that question that has been, I'm sure you all have heard this question as the most popular interview question, right? What do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? And more often than not, we all have a prepared answer for this question. And that's kind of, to me, I've always thought that that question is overrated in interviews because you will never get a proper answer for that question. It's always a rehearsed answer that you get for that question. However, when it comes to your personal development and your personal introspective progress, that question is probably the most relevant question. So you have to have in your mind, you don't have to probably share it with anybody, but in your mind, you have to have solid clarity on where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And then what happens is when you are in a certain situation, you should always analyze yourself. Is this helping me? What I'm going through right now, is this helping me in my final goal? And if you're able to, on a day-to-day basis or on an experience-to-experience basis, take stock towards your goal, that's probably my second element. That is your focus and keeping in line with your focus. And the third one is, you've heard this before, the ability to work hard. Now, working hard cannot be confused with slogging. You should be smart enough to understand what is slogging versus what is working hard. Working hard to me plainly is, it's not really to please anybody. It's basically to please yourself. To say that, okay, these were what I had set forward as goals for myself, and am I working hard enough? And if you kind of keep these three things, and they do sound like very simple things, it'll give you somewhat a 3-point program. I don't know if I answered that question okay.
I'm sure you did. So a lot of them come back and say, you know, I worked very hard, but I did not get through OCLD. I worked very hard, but I'm not there in the Taj, you know, the HDP program. So there is a lot of disappointment when they say I worked very hard and I didn't. So
disappointment is part of life, Anjali. Disappointment is life. Okay, but the funny thing is, with disappointment comes opportunities. Okay, there is a little fact that people don't know about my career. I actually skipped it when I spoke about it. I did everything that I could, and I was at the OCLD. So I was one of the very fortunate ones to be there and whatnot. But the second year of my OCLD, I had a very bad accident.
okay.
That accident would take me out of operations and take me out of the industry for good 9 months. I was literally bedridden for about maybe 6 months. So I looked at my own career and I said that, listen, what the hell just happened? I mean, I thought I had it all going for me. I was poised to top OCLD as the gold medalist. And then suddenly I see that my colleagues are, you know, clearing OCLD with flying colors, and I'm stuck in a hospital bed. So disappointment is part of life. Now, the question is what you make out of it. And this happens not just today, it happens all the time in your life. I mean, we can see what is happening today in the whole global scenario. So How you navigate those difficulties and what you make out of it is what's going to define you. It's not really the success will the planned successes will help you. You worked hard, you got through OCLD, that'll help you. But what is going to be even more valuable is you planned, you work hard, you didn't get through OCLD, what did you do next? That's what's going to really define you.
It's a beautiful answer. I'm sure, this is something which I'm going to repeat it to a lot of students. So, okay. So, going to the next one, what we had was about the hygiene standard, because suddenly there has been, not that the hospitality industry was not into hygiene and sanitation, it was always there. I'm sure, housekeepers would definitely say they have a big list of all kinds of sanitizers and all kinds of, disinfectants they have been using. But COVID has disrupted a lot of, SOPs and kind of brought in a lot of things into the industry. So having said that, what is happening in the kitchen? Like, how are you taking care of that particular aspect when it comes to probably, see, US, as we see it, of course, the numbers are not really kind of coming down or whatever, but everything is kind of more or less open in that part of the globe. However, we are kind of still not been able to kind of figure out hotels are open here, but it's like, say, about 5 to 10% of occupancy kind of a thing. So how are you managing these? What kind of changes have come in the kitchen?
So sanitation is real. So I mean, if hygiene and cleaning and sanitation is real, so it is not that we didn't have processes before, but I would really ask all of us, including myself, to ask yourself a question: how serious were you about cleaning and sanitation? I mean, we all had these processes that we write. How often or how regularly did you actually stick to all these processes on an everyday basis? And the answer will be very surprising. We all have these processes written down beautifully on a piece of paper, but when it comes to, let's say, 300 people sitting in your restaurant and rushing to get food fed, you kind of circumvent all this and go on and do your business. So what COVID has done is, COVID has really thrown this question at us, saying, how serious are you ready to take sanitation? And we have no choice right now. It's really being blown up on our face as to this is what it is. And I'm going to share something personal with you. Back in when the whole COVID thing started, 12th of March, I actually was sick. And in my head, I knew that I was COVID positive, okay? Because there were cases going very high in New York. But I did something really cool. I really did isolate myself and from my family and everybody, and did what I could do as I would do following an SOP or a program in a hotel or in a kitchen. And strangely enough, after a couple of weeks when I got tested myself, I turned out positive, and my wife, who actually has been in close contact with me, but after taking all the precautions, tested negative, which to me tells you, which actually what it tells, I mean, it's not about me, but what it tells you is, if you really followed procedures and processes, you will get a result. And that's a lesson that I can share to take to the units, whether it's a kitchen, whether it's a housekeeping operation, whether it is a public area. So the key to me is educating people. And normally, I do take a lot of sanitation, or I used to take a lot of sanitation and hygiene classes. And one of the first things that I would talk about is what's in it for you. So I normally would take an analogy which is quite, I would say, people often laugh and often wonder, why is he using this analogy? When I do, I kind of equate feeding people to injecting you with a drug. So I ask people.
That's a very strange analogy.
I know. It's quite shocking. So I ask people normally, if somebody gave you a little syringe on the street and said, now inject this into your body, would you do it? And the question is obviously no. But you're walking through and somebody gives you a morsel of food, would you eat it? 100%, right? We do this all the time. Somebody gives you a sample for you to taste, we eat it. Now, if you look at both these activities, they're actually the same. You're injecting something into your body. So people need to realize that we're in the business of actually a very critical aspect of people's lives. And how serious you're ready to, or you're able to take it, that's what's going to dictate how safe you're going to keep the consumer. So people have to realize that you're actually in serious business. You have the your responsibility is no less than a nurse who is injecting medicine into somebody's body. So if you are able to take that serious, and if you're able to keep the team aware of that, what's in it for you, and then that will be the key to success in the whole sanitation program. And then I think the SOPs are already there. We all have learned in our first year housekeeping management class. Miss Jolly ma'am taught us really well that.
She's there with us here.
Oh, she taught us really well that cleaning comes after sanitation comes after cleaning. You know, that lesson we learned a long time ago. But the question is, how often do we do it? Are we most of us today are comfortable with just putting sanitizer on our hand and rubbing it off and feeling that everything is looked after. So the SOPs and processes are already there. You may need to tweak it a little bit based on what is going on right now. But what is more important is you have to seize this opportunity to make a case that this is now real, that you must follow the protocols or else. So it's just awareness that is important.
So when it comes to hotels in US, all of it is back in operation totally, or I mean, all of them are back in operation?
No, not at all. So we are still in a moving phase. At least in New York, we got really lucky that our governor had a really solid reopening plan. So they had a 4-phase plan stating that if all these, they looked at various indices of cases. I mean, you know that New York was probably the hardest hit across the world. If New York was a country by itself, we would have had the highest cases of hospitalization and deaths.
Quite a busy city also. I think one of the most busiest cities across.
Correct, correct. But thankfully, yesterday was our first day after the pandemic started with 0 deaths. So we're on a path of recovery. So hotels, there's probably maybe 2 to 4 main hotels that is opened since then. Otherwise, most hotels are still shut. But most of the hotels are planning a reopening sometime in the next 2 to 6 weeks. So by September, we feel that most of the hotels, or rather all of the hotels, will open up.
Okay, I think that sounds a plan. I don't know when.
Yeah, but the restaurants most of the restaurants have opened up with outdoor seating. That's our phase 3. Basically, phase 4 is when we will allow seating inside the hotel, inside the restaurants. So there's a lot of what is really warming to see is that most businesses have really taken this on and pivoted their businesses to various arenas, whether it is the takeaway business, or whether it is cook at home kind of programs. Like you basically have a half prepared meal kits, if you will. It's a little different from meal kits. Most of the cooking is done. All you have to do is probably reheating and putting on a plate, and or setting up these outdoor cafes. What is remarkable is how people have reacted to this whole situation.
So your hotel is selling meal kits?
Yeah, so it's a little more than meal kits. A lot of restaurants are doing it. We are planning to do it when we open up. We haven't opened up our operations yet. So imagine as your, let's say, a breast of chicken or a steak which is already seared, cooked for you. All you have to do is you reheat and you eat. But it's not, but reheat in steps. Not you plonk everything into a microwave and pull it out. And it comes with instructions and whatnot. So you get a very as close to restaurant meal in your home. Okay. Very different from just a packed meal.
Because, when it comes to meal kits, Amazon had launched meal kits here. And Rajesh was mentioning the other day that it's not really moving at all. So
meal kits is going to be a tough business in India, Rajesh. Because see, the thing is, we are not used to. I mean, let's look at our restaurant operations. how many of our restaurants actually follow recipes?
We all have our own recipes.
1 to 2%. So that's more than anything. That's a conceptual problem. We don't like to follow instructions sometimes.
Sometimes, I think most of the time.
I'm being generous. Right?
Yes, yes. Okay, moving on to the next one. The next question I got was, how's the hospitality scenario different in India and abroad, especially for a chef in terms of career growth?
See, the most of these basic elements for success and growth kind of remain the same. You know, you show up, you work hard, you do what you have to do. But to me, the main difference between a professional especially for the culinary area, in culinary and food and beverage, not just cooking, is exposure. When you get out of India, you have a huge, your world opens up a little bit into actually seeing what you're taught. And that's not because of anything else, because see, most of our culinary and food and beverage programs are based on a Western cuisine platform. It's not based on an Indian or an Asian cuisine platform. So we are taught our mother sauces and our basics from staying in a Western cuisine platform. Okay, we know more about Parma ham than we know about Goshtaba, for example. Okay, so we've been taught that way. So now when you travel abroad or when you travel to a major city in the East, then you are now actually being coming face to face with 5 different types of Parma hams. So now you know that, okay, now I've read about this, now I'm seeing it. So exposure is a big deal. So as long as the curriculums remain Western cuisine based, which is going to remain, I'm not saying that it should change drastically, but I would really like to see some of the Asian and the Indian cuisines being built into curriculums in a more robust fashion, which is kind of my dream. But otherwise, as long as these platforms and the curriculums remain Western cuisine oriented, what is very important for all of the people who are aspiring to be chefs, food and beverage professionals, is to have exposure. And that exposure can come in many ways. I mean, back in the day, we all had to sit down and browse through books in a library. And I had to, I mean, today you can do it through Instagram. Today you can do it through various platforms. But if you do get a chance, one must travel. So going back to your question, that's a big differentiator. You now have a high level of exposure when you're. But from a career growth standpoint, that exposure can take you a long way. You already come with a lot of advantages. You understand spices. You understand multiple cuisines like nobody else does. For example, I keep telling people that there is no such thing as Indian cuisine. Okay, there is actually Indian cuisines. We have, just the way most of us talk multiple languages, we all also understand multiple cuisines, and we are designed to understand multiple cuisines, which is a big ask when it comes to a chef's life. Like you have to understand multiple, and that understanding is already built in us, which gives you a huge competitive advantage. And when you travel abroad, it's very difficult to see, unless you are in some countries like Switzerland, etc. Let's say if you're in a typical American city, the only language the guy speaks is English. And the only cuisine that he understands is American or Italian cuisine. That's it. Whereas you are designed, like if you live in Bangalore, you already know South Indian cooking, Mangalorean cooking, or whatnot. You have exposed to it. Plus all the Western stuff that you've been taught anyways. So you come with that advantage when you're abroad as an Indian working in a kitchen. So it gives you easier way to navigate those elements in the kitchen. However, there is still a little bit of a stigma of when it comes to top positions, they do want somebody with that ethnicity, and race comes into play, unfortunately. But it's changing for the better. So that's basically what I can share about this question, I guess.
Okay. Okay, so you mean to say that the regional cuisine which is being taught in the second year in QTK is not enough?
Oh, not
We
enough.
need to have more of
Absolutely
it.
not enough.
Okay. So there has to be
No,
much more going into.
yeah, I would really like to see the first year curriculum to have some elements of Indian and Asian.
I think it's time for a total revamp of curriculum plus. Okay, Ashwar, you know, all your Instagram pics, your Facebook, you've been extensively putting up a lot of food photographs. I think a lot of us have been looking at it and saying wow, wow about it. So I'm sure there is, there is very, detailing going into all your platings. They're all beautiful pictures. You know, each of them are quite. It's like an art. Most of them are. So, tips on plating is something which I think, how do you make that visual appeal? What do you do? Is there any particular way you look at, or it is the creativity? How does it work?
So I'm glad you talked about food as an art. So there's a big debate, right? Is food a science or food an art? So from talking about injecting yourself with medicines, let's come to art.
No, yes. But your platings are amazing. I mean,
So
food is an art when I look at
food
all
is
of
an
them.
art. So food is an absolute form of art, and food is probably one of the most extreme forms of art. So I have this debate sometimes with actually artists. So we have one of our lounges in Pier where we have a program where you have a rotating artist program. So we have the walls of these restaurants is actually lined with art from artists, and these artists change every 6 months or less. So every 3 to 6 months, somebody new comes in. So I'm fortunate to have been interacting with a very high-end, and you're talking about Museum of Modern Art kind of artists. So and I talk to them, and I always debate with them, saying that my art is more extreme than your art. So they ask me why so, and my answer is, think about this: I create this art on a plate, and it's consumed in no time. So I have nothing to show you, but my art is done. So imagine, so I call my art as a perishable art.
Okay.
So if you go back to my Instagram title, it says crafter of perishable art. So I call this an extreme form of art. And you take pride in that art being consumed, right? And you get your high from being somebody fully satisfied with that art. So art is not just in plating; art is also in creating the taste and the combinations. However, the visual is a big deal. So for my some input in terms of plating is, one thing for me is that do not compromise visual for the taste. Always taste has to be the first thing. So if you feel that, and we all of us did this mistake. I did actually when I was starting out, that I would plan a dish thinking how it's going to look and not how it's going to taste. So that's the number one wrong thing that you can do with plating. So you have to say taste is what is more important, and then you give importance to the plating. And in terms of plating, first thing is obviously to choose the right plate. Some tips on plating I'm going to go with. So choose the right plate. You obviously cannot have a green dish and a green plate. It's not going to work. So the color of the plate, the shape of the plate is super important. The next thing is you have to kind of visualize what do you want your dish to convey to the person who's looking at it. Just the way the artist would do. You want the guest to look at first. Do you want them to look at the center of the plate first and then the eyes travel? You have to bring in some kind of a design elements to the whole plating story. For the people who are tech, which most of us today are tech advanced, we are. I would actually,
Thanks to COVID.
I would actually urge you to take some basic design lessons if you're interested in plating, because the ethos are pretty much the same. So you have to look at where the eye is going to travel. The third thing is you kind of make sure that the plate is clean. When I say clean, there are various things that you can do to make sure that you convey kind of a cleanliness on a plate. which is one of the things that I do specifically, is that I always leave an inch or an inch and a half from the rim of the plate into the center of the plate empty. And then you always you visualize a circle within the circle if it's a round plate, or a square within a square if it's a square plate, leaving 1 to 1.5 inches on the rim, and then you work within that, and that will automatically make your plate clean. The fourth thing that I would say is a concept that I follow is careful carelessness. So you want your plate to look not so clinical. You're not in a hospital. Okay, you're in a again, it's an art. It shouldn't look like you drew this using what is that thing called? Protractor, right?
Protractor, yes. Protractor.
And Werner calipers. You didn't do that. Okay, you actually used a spoon and a fork or a tong. So it should look like that. The more the guests feel that the chef has spent time on the plate, it actually will not appeal to them, believe it or not. So I tell people to follow careful carelessness. Okay, you have to be careful, but at the same time you have to give an aura of, oh, I was just putting it on the plate. You always have to strike a balance between the time that you spend on a plate, and this you will realize when it comes to serving high numbers. Like we do plated dinners in the hotel. One of our biggest part of our business at the pier is our events business. God knows where it is headed with all the COVID going on. We do plated dinners up to 700 people, and we plate them a la minute. When I say a la minute, we actually plate 700 plates in a span of about 12 to 13 minutes. So when it comes to that, you always have to strike up, and each plate has to look good, right? So you have to strike a balance on the temperature of the food and the time that it takes and how it looks on a plate. If you plan a too complicated plating, you're going to spend 2 to 3 minutes on a plate. The food is going to go cold, which nobody's going to appreciate. So then again, it affects the whole experience of the plate. So you have to strike that perfect balance. The last part is no unnecessary garnishes. So we do this. We've all done this mistake. I have done this mistake back in the day. A little twill or little fried herb which had no reason to be on the plate. So do not do that. The plate has to tell a story, and the story completes with that garnish. That there are some places you don't need a garnish. If you decide to put a garnish, the garnish should have a story. Like I would use, let's say, a piece of star anise as a garnish, which is a beautiful thing, if the stock was made using star anise as a spice. Otherwise, it doesn't belong there.
Okay, so I think so the chef has to be an artist along with being a chef, and 100%. Probably much more. Much more, I guess.
No, art and design is so intertwined into a chef's life that if it is not, then it's very difficult to be a successful chef.
Got that. That's, I think, very important part of the entire this thing. When you talk about
and art is everywhere. Art, you can take motivation from day-to-day things that you see. Art and design is actually everywhere, and this is why I was saying that I would really encourage budding chefs to take some kind of a basic design course. And you have 1,000 online courses available today. You can look at a leaf or a plant and think design, and you can incorporate that into. You can get inspiration from that into your food.
That's a lot of ideas. I'm sure some of them would think about doing this, and probably now a lot of time as well. Thanks to COVID, a lot of us are sitting at home. So online, I think courses are something which is totally an option too. A lot 100%. Of us. Yes. Okay, moving to the next one. It says, how do you manage the absurd requests? So have you had absurd requests coming in from, I am sure there are more than enough.
The question is, what is absurd, right?
Now, what is absurd for you is not what is absurd for you.
Exactly. So, we call this sometimes the chicken feet question, right? So the chicken feet?
Yes.
So is chicken feet absurd?
It depends. I mean, it's a relative.
Exactly. Not for somebody who lives in Thailand, right? It's part of
Yes.
their or not for somebody who lives in China. So so what is this? So the question of absurdness is one thing, but the whole question of demand is kind of a normal thing if you, especially if you're into luxury hotel business. If you are in the 2-3 stars, as we call it, I call it the business or whatever, then it kind of passes by. But especially when you deal with luxury hotel business or luxury restaurateuring, you'll realize that personalization is probably one of the key elements of the new luxury. Because luxury left what it was a long time ago. Gone are those days when you could have a golden embossed pen and this and that and furniture and whatnot, and that was considered luxury. That is not anymore. So luxury today is personalization. Luxury today is anticipation, and luxury today is fulfilling that whim. And that whim is what I think we're talking about right now. So in some cases, those whims are basic. In some cases, those whims are extraordinary. But as a chef, as a food and beverage professional, and just as a hotelier, your job is to somehow meet that expectation and exceed that expectation, as long as it is legal and as long as it is reasonable, right? I mean, no one. There comes a stage when some of these requests will cross a line, and then you have to put your foot down and say, hey, that line I'm not going to cross.
So have you turned down guests?
Oh, 100 all the time. So
Okay.
it also has to do with what you're capable of in your operations. Like you can, once in a while, you do have a situation where you're trying to serve 500 people, and then suddenly you get a request which you cannot accommodate given the resources that you have. So in that situation, you have to say, oh, you know what, I'm sorry, but I can't do this right now, but I probably will be able to do this tomorrow for you.
Okay.
You're still here. So that happens all the time. But however, so the whole personalization has taken on a different form of luxury, and you have your one key element in this is if you head an operation, one of the things that you have to do is you have to make sure that your day-to-day running of the operation has to be very process driven. Like I make sure that my operations is pretty much run by my sous chef. I am there when he needs me, and I'm there working hands-on. But at the same time, my sous chef has to be pretty much comfortable running the day-to-day operations. Then I get to focus on a weird request that I get.
Okay.
Okay, whether making it work or maybe pulling resources to make that work.
Okay. Okay.
But one must acknowledge and execute some of these requests, because that's see, think about this, whether it is a celebrity or whether it is a normal person, he or she stays with you, spends maybe a week with you if you're in a resort property, or spends 3 days if you're in a business property. Some of my best friends that I have made from guests are because they had a weird request.
Oh, that's that's an insight.
Yeah, that's that one experience that they'll always remember. Okay, like let's say, and some of them are genuine requests based on genuine situations. Allergies are a big thing, and allergies are increasing day by day, and it's only going to go up, because these days, our immunity is in question in most cases. These are all playing out right in front of us. So people have different levels of immunity, different levels of allergies, different levels of health concerns. So all this brings different requests, and your ability to somehow comply and give into and exceed the expectations in terms of those requests is what's going to be remembered. And like I said, I've made a lot of friends purely on those requests.
Okay. That's that's an information totally. So the last question from me here is, what do you think is the reason for less number of women chefs I think now a lot of girls aspiring to be chefs. What is it? They see around. There are not too many women chefs around. So, why do you think?
I have to I have to be very critical and say that unfortunately we've had some tough situations where the women were not treated well, especially in kitchens. And I have witnessed it myself. I have witnessed it in India. I've witnessed abroad. I mean, the whole Me Too movement that recently happened. One of the
Yes.
which actually blew up was New York. I mean, there was Chef Mario Batali, who we all thought was invincible, was suddenly in the big limelight of unfortunate incidents. And what was really unfortunate to me, that the whole, I don't know how many of you followed that story, but for me, what broke my heart in that story is that there was actually a lady chef who was at the helm of these things, who probably did say nothing when all this was going on, and she was in the middle of it. So I wouldn't say that it's caused only by men, but the industry as general has not been very kind to how it has treated women, the restaurant and the food service industry. Thankfully, it is changing. The awareness is there, and I'm really hoping that I would like to see more chefs come forward who are of the fairer sex, if that's still the right thing to say. So
With so much of black
uh,
and all those things happening in US,
yeah,
especially.
exactly. No, but let me tell you something. I've had the real fortune to work with some of the lady chefs in my career, and believe you me, I would rate them any day. If I were to generalize, I would rate them any day higher than my male counterparts.
Okay.
Uh,
Wow.
and, yeah, both in terms of skill and all these, typical things that we talk about, energy and stamina and all that jazz. Believe you me, the woman can do it better than men. Trust me.
That's very nice to hear that,
Yeah.
Ashver.
This whole thing of it's the myth that only men can stand 8 hours on their foot a day and things like that.
Okay.
The women chefs that I have worked with, they'll put you to shame when it comes to in terms of any circumstances. And the other thing is, relationships wise, the kitchens have changed. Let's say 15 years ago, it was okay to yell and scream in kitchen. It is absolutely not. And I do positively believe that having more women in the kitchen would bring a certain amount of order in the kitchen.
Okay.
So if anybody who is hiring for number twos, department heads, if you want a little more order in your kitchen, this is the right thing to do.
Okay. Okay. So one question from me: what is your most favorite ingredient when it comes to a chef?
I have to say salt.
That's a mean
Yeah, no.
answer.
So it's true though, because the big difference between a good meal and a great meal and a good meal is salt. If it is seasoned well, it's always good. But I do have some other key, some
Favorite.
other citrus is. I'm big on citrus. I love lemons, lime. People from south of India has that typical sour affinity towards the sour tastes. Peppercorns I'm big on. I love peppercorns in any form.
I think that comes from Kerala. So
Yeah, I mean, see, yes, it does come from Kerala, but think about it. Our whole nation got colonized because of one spice, and that's peppercorn. So, and for roughly 60% of the world, the only spice that they know is pepper. So peppercorns I'm big on. Then I love garlic. Garlic is my go-to ingredient in most cases. Yeah, so.
okay. So those are all the questions which had come. There was one big question which had come from Mr. Prateep Majumdar. Chaitali, can you please unmute? He's director for Shulini University. So when he had registered, there was one big question which had come. So I would like him to ask by himself before the floor is open for the others. So are you there?
Yes, Mr.
Yes,
Majumdar.
I am there, but first of all, namaskar to Principal Vats, if you are still around. And thank you very much to dear friend Anjali and your lovely husband Rajesh Prasad, who I know from you. And thank you to Chef Krishnendu for having invited me on this program of yours, where I'm attending along with my Shirani University students. And Chef Biju, in absentia, if I was able to, I would have given you a hug. The reason is because you belong to the same family from where I started my career in 1989. So welcome to OCLD. During my times, it was Oberoi School of Hotel Management. So how are you, brother? If you were around, I would have given you a hug. So hello to everyone, all the Ihm Bangalore students, and namaskar to all my friends on the program. So I had a question here, Chef. In these present pandemic times, look at it very, very carefully. The food and beverage business. I'm sorry, I'm not much of an artist or a crafter of perishable art like you are. I'm completely money driven, being from a revenue background. So the point that I'm trying to make here is, in current pandemic time, the F&B business has pretty much done a backward integration, in the sense that the finest of restaurants have now tied up with Swiggy and Zomato, which are aggregators to deliver takeaway food and home cooked food. You wouldn't believe it. I recently got a news snippet that ITC Hotels has already tied up 10 of its topmost properties with their topmost restaurants with Swiggy and Zomato to do takeaway and home delivery. So when I was actually thinking, three things came into my mind. How are you going to look at your pricing? How are you going to look at your quality, and forget about your profitability? I leave it for you to think about it, Chef Biju.
Thank you for that. It's a great question, and you know, you said something which, you know, you said you're not so much of an artist, but you're driven by finances. So I'm glad you actually said that, because see, end of the day, and sometimes we forget that we're all in this because money is to be made. So you have, if you are in this profession, you have no option but to be a financial controller or somebody who cares about finances. Now, what I would recommend my colleagues or people who are serious about food not to be is accountants, but then you're just counting money. But I would encourage all of you to take a real keen interest in finances and take serious note about what makes or breaks businesses. So it's a great question. I'm glad you asked that question. I wanted to touch finances at some stage. So you're absolutely right. So, you know, a lot of these so-called high-end restaurants and hotels have gone into situations such as Swiggy and Uber Eats and whatnot. To me, I really wouldn't blame this on COVID. I thought this was coming, with or without COVID. You know, people often mistake exclusivity for luxury. Exclusivity is not really luxury to me, if you ask me. For me, luxury is actually an experience that you can provide based on integrity of ingredients and integrity of recipes and integrity of your product. Now, in some cases, people have gotten away with charging high prices for substandard products. That was going to go away anyways. And you can already see this in cities like Bangalore, Mumbai, where these independent restaurants have given a run all these hotel restaurants for the money. And why does that happen? Because they have brought forward. It happened for two reasons. One, there was a big stigma against hygiene and sanitation in India when it comes to independent restaurants. That stigma is gone, because now these restaurants most of them have come very transparent when it comes to their back of the house practices. So that stigma is gone. And what these restaurants have cleverly done is they have brought forth integrity in cooking forward. And once that happens across many more restaurants, this was bound to happen anyways. COVID just kind of accelerated that whole motion. So the 5-star businesses and the high-end dining establishments have had to do this introspection anyways, and if they didn't do this earlier, bad on them, basically. They should have done this anyways. However, these times call for even more steps where you can pivot your business. So you have to get, I don't think Swiggy and Uber Eats are the answer. The answer is basically to get creative and see how you can add value. You have to think, again, not as an accountant, but as a financial controller, okay, and a businessman, and say, how do I make my business unique, and how do I make my business value, how do I add value that it is perceived superior to what is being offered otherwise, okay? Now, it could be various things. It could be this whole thing of this new cook the restaurant meals at home concept that was spoken about, or the integrity of cuisine, integrity of chefs, experiencing something that you don't experience. So there are multiple things that you can think about to make yours, to differentiate your product from competition. And that would be the key. It's not this whole thing of just because I'm 5-star, I have to have certain pricing. That's not going to work anymore.
You see, Biju, if I may just suggest, when you look at your standard recipe costing, you have already gotten yourself a certain amount of cost price, on top of which you're building in a profit margin. Are you being able to hear me, Chef?
Yes, I am.
So as per your standard recipe costing, you already have a cost price. You have built into that cost price a profit margin, and you come to your selling price. Now, all of a sudden, Swiggy, Zomato, Uber Eats, these aggregators will take away a certain percentage of commission because they are not going to do anything free of cost. Number one is the commission factor, and number two is the brand dilution. Imagine a restaurant at the pier doing a takeaway home delivery through aggregator. Look at the brand dilution that such a great restaurant has come down to these levels, that food cost has gone up hugely, profit levels have come down, and you are just trying to stay in the business. That's it. Whether there is any substantial reason in the long run to stay in the business.
So I wouldn't call it. So let me answer the question in two parts. One, brand dilution. I wouldn't call that brand dilution. I would actually call it brand outreach and accessibility. And I think that accessibility is very important for all brands, even if they're high and mighty. First of all, high and mighty is not a big deal anymore, because see, this, especially the COVID, has been a real equalizer in a lot of situations. If it's not just that, I mean, we all know, what was it 2 days ago? The biggest news was that Mr. Bachchan was diagnosed positive for COVID, right? So just the way COVID doesn't spare anybody, this whole dining has to be quite democratic. So if it is a strong brand, the brand has to get outreach. So I wouldn't really worry about the brand being accessible in one and more formats. That wouldn't be my concern. But the second thing that you said, the whole commission business is quite a concern. Why is it so? Because like you rightly said, and this happened to hotels a few years ago. If you look at, let's say 25 years ago, hotels sold rooms directly, right? People called hotels and booked rooms. People basically walked into hotels and stayed in the hotels. There was no Expedia. There was no Orbitz.com.
Absolutely
So,
right. Absolutely.
Yeah, in came Expedia and literally took a chunk of their revenues for somebody sitting in an office and playing on the mouse and keypad. It's kind of blunt to put it that way, but they were not really providing any hospitality. But now suddenly they are taking away all your money. So that kind of thing is quite concerning. But there are certain things that you can do. Number one, it's becoming more and more easy to launch your own platforms. Maybe not for delivery, but for pickup. A lot of the restaurants, at least in New York, are actually now choosing their own platforms rather than tying up with another outside company. Number two, the regulations has to come into play. So I don't know if you've heard this before, but the city of Chicago was the first one to impose a cap on the third-party fees. So they said that, and soon San Francisco and New York followed. Now all three cities and even more cities have joined since then. We all have a cap on how much commission that a certain company can make.
Right.
Out of your business. So I'm sure somebody in India is thinking about the same thing. The regulations have to come into play and put a cap on this. The third thing, which I want to, this is my two-part answer to that question. And the third thing actually is, you have to look at this part of business as an added business. You can't say, okay, so this is not, this situation is very different from that of the hotel rooms. Hotel rooms, when Expedia came in, you had let's say if you had 100 rooms to sell, you had 100 rooms to sell. The moment you sold your 100th room, you're done. Whereas in the restaurant business, that's not the case. Okay, you can continue to serve meals if the meals are being consumed elsewhere. So as a businessman, as a chef who's thinking as a businessman, you have to say, how do I still do my 100 covers in the restaurant and cater to this 50 additional covers that I'm going to have from Swiggy or Uber Eats. Now, if you write your business
plan, that's a very nice way of thinking. That's a very lovely way of thinking.
So if you write your business plan, factoring this as an incremental revenue, you will be fine.
Great
answer. Great answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mazumdar. It's lovely to have you here.
Likewise, my brother. Likewise.
Can I have questions from the audience? Anyone who would like to ask questions, please raise your hands.
I think Rajesh has a question.
First, am I audible, Chef?
Yes, we can hear you.
Not anymore.
Sorry, you need to be louder, I guess.
Okay, let me try to be a bit louder. So my question was, I think there's something wrong.
No, you can speak. We can hear you.
No, Mr. Rajesh, we are being able to hear you.
Okay, sorry. So, Chef, my question was with regard to technologies. Now, we hear a lot of new technologies coming into kitchen. So I want to understand from you, I mean, being in New York and US, where you have disproportionate investments on technologies, how is technology changing kitchen operations and how has been your experience, let's say, from the time you have been working in New York? That's point one. And point two is for companies like Amazon, how do you think they would partner with kitchens and chefs like you to bring in the technologies they're good at? Things like artificial intelligence, use of Alexa, or all those technologies which Amazon actually is taking into homes. Do you think there is a partnership or an opportunity in future there?
I lost the last bit of your question, but I think I got what you were talking about. So the question was, let me just repeat. The question was, how does technology impact, how has technology impacted the kitchen businesses right now as we stand, and how would these tech companies such as Amazon partner with kitchens and chefs? Is that right? Okay, so the whole technology and the kitchen. So we know this already. Technology is everywhere, and if you didn't embrace it before, you will get forced to you will be forced to embrace technology, whether it is in the form of to me what the main thing that technology has done for kitchens is it's made all of us very honest, and it's forced the chefs to be honest. And why do I say that? Because let's say 10 years ago, you could throw some lemongrass and Thai basil and Thai chili into any damn thing and serve and say that this is a Thai curry. Okay, today you can't do that anymore. The technology has basically made sure that whatever you say and do it better be honest and clear, which to me it's a great, it's done wonders to the industry. It's taken things to a different level. Other than that, you have several tools that are already in the kitchen which is using technology. I would think and I would hope that kitchens are the last places where you see an influx of unnecessary technology. For example, I wouldn't want to see an Alexa in the kitchen. I do have an Alexa in my home kitchen. We are an Alexa family, by the way. These days we have competition, right? Alexa family, Google family, and Cortana family. But I wouldn't want to see an Alexa in the kitchens, in a commercial kitchen. Why do I say that? Because there is no time for that. There is no time to ask Alexa something, and then if Alexa guides you in a different way, and then you have to now switch your focus. However, I would see tech integration in a lot of other businesses. I'll give you a small example. Part of sanitation, we always worry about refrigeration temperatures. Okay. Now, unfortunately, this is an area which is still very highly managed by people, and there is no reason for it to be. We all know what should be the temperature of a refrigerator, what should be the temperature of a freezer. Okay. There is no reason why somebody has to physically monitor this on a day in, day out basis. If you write a program and if you have several tech tools, this is something that can get taken care of automatically. And the sad truth is that apart from one little company that is in Boston trying to do the right thing, there are no technologies exist to do this. Okay, so if somebody is listening out there who is in the tech business, this is a great business model. An average hotel kitchen typically has anything from 40 to 60 refrigerators, believe it or not, if it's a large enough hotel. Now, if you kind of connect all these refrigeration thermostats to a certain program, and you take observation, the chefs don't have to worry about this thing anymore. Then the chefs get to spend time on creating dishes, which is what they're supposed to do anyways, right? It is not the chef's job to monitor temperatures. It shouldn't be. So I cited this as an example because there are a lot of these things which are not your core business that can be delegated to technology. And that's where I see the technology being a great partner. I don't want Alexa or Cortana to design dishes for me, nor to give me input on how to create dishes, because I think human beings are better at that. Human beings are any day better at design, creativity, art. There is no art written by a computer which is better than what is hanging in Louvre. We all know this. Okay, so let the hospitality professionals spend time on what they should be doing. And I could even cite an example in front desk. Okay, our job as front desk professionals should be to communicate warmth and hospitality. And believe you me, there is no robot that is created today who can do that as human being.
Absolutely.
Okay, so leave the day-to-day tech stuff to tech, and then you focus on your core business. I hope that answers your question, Rajesh.
Yes. Thanks, Chef. Thank you very much.
Do we have any other students or anyone who would like to ask questions?
Ma'am,
Please.
Chinmay here. I'd like to.
Yes, Chinmay, please go ahead.
Good morning, Chef Biju. My name is Chinmay.
Morning, Chinmay.
I've had the pleasure to, do your room amenity at the Taj Dubai. So that's when I first heard of you. So anyway, coming to my question, the pier is a New York icon even before the Taj took it over. And now, since you're there at the helm, how would you bring in the concept of Tajness and make it relevant to the New York food and beverage space?
It's an excellent question, and
question.
It's more than Tajness. I think it's because we at New York, we are kind of the custodian of Indian hospitality in New York. So we'd like to perceive ourselves as someone who has to communicate not just a Tajness but India to the Western or the American clientele. And why I say American clientele is because everybody comes to New York. You might be a Texan, you might be living in Midwest of America, but you do come to New York any. So this was a question that was raised a few years ago when Taj took over the pier. We've had some trouble answering this question, but I think now we have some kind of a format that we've done it in I would say successfully. First of all, the pier already had an identity of being a very successful hotel way before Taj. So we would be stupid to let that go. So which is why if you look at our branding, it says the pier, a Taj hotel. It does not say Taj Pier. Okay, and there are three things in our branding: the pier, New York, and the Taj. So the pier has to remain the classic New York hotel that it is, with some elements from India or the Taj. And I always thought that India is kind of synonymous with Taj and vice versa, as hospitality goes. And I'm not saying this because I work for Taj. I even felt this. I would rate Oberoi for a lot of things higher than even all the other hotel companies in the world. But I think Taj has a certain Indian connection, which I don't think any other company has from an Indian hospitality standpoint. So we do a couple of things in the hotel. One, our amenity program is very driven by the whole Indian element. Our in-room dining program has elements of Indianism in it. Breakfast is a big deal because breakfast is one meal period which you can cover a lot of hotel guests. We don't really sometimes want to communicate this Indianism in our let's say in event space, but breakfast is where we would want to communicate that. So we do have Indian elements in our cuisine and breakfast. And what we also have is we now celebrate Indian festivals. So Diwali is a big deal when it comes to the pier. We literally close part of the street and celebrate Diwali during October, November. It's the last month that you can actually be outdoors before the winter sets in, but we do that on an annual basis. And there's an interesting fact that people don't know about the pier, which I would like to share. So in 1948, just when India had gotten independence, the pier, believe it or not, it was not operated by Taj at that point of time, nor had Taj even had thought about being at the pier. But in 1948, the pier actually had an Indian restaurant. It was called the Pier Grill, and they had actually got 5 chefs from Calcutta. They housed the chefs in the hotel. The restaurant ran from 1948 to around 65. There is actually a couple, Anthony and Mary Pierce, who's written a cookbook called Greatest. I forget the name of the book. I'm blank. So I will share this with this book with Anjali, the title. In 1965, they wrote this cookbook, and this cookbook actually has a detailed write-up about this Indian restaurant. So Taj being at the pier was almost a destined thing. And we do have, let's say, 4 or 5 Indian dishes on our French menu in the restaurant, paying tribute to this thing that existed in 1948.
Thank you so much, Chef.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Do we have any other questions? Anyone raising hands?
Jaydevan has a question.
Yes, I have a question, Chef. Good morning. I think it's almost afternoon, I believe.
No, it's still morning for us.
So, as you rightly mentioned earlier, there are several. There has been several Indian restaurants across US, and there have been several restaurants popping up across US, and even I've heard of a Sri Lankan guy selling dosas in a small cart in New York, which is quite famous and all that. However, there really isn't any Indian restaurant chain, maybe a QSR in the US, which is in a stature of Taco Bell or Chipotle or stuff like that. And why do you think? Well, there is no Indian cuisine, as you said. It is Indian cuisines. But why do you think Indian restaurant chains are not really picking up in the US?
So Jaydevan, you just kind of answered your question. No, but it's true. The thing is, our cooking, Indian cuisine as such had bad reputation in US. In some parts of US, it still does, unfortunately. But at the moment, it is having a moment. we were always perceived to be, the Indian cuisine was always perceived to be something that you did takeaway or you did all you can eat buffets, unfortunately. Okay. A few chefs have come and done some brave stuff and changed that perception, and it's kind of changing right now. If you look at London, it happened in London about 15 years ago. New York is now going through that journey, and it has to happen in New York before it can happen in any other city in US. It's either New York and San Francisco, and basically the entire US will take inspiration from these two cities. It's happening right now, and first thing is we have to put Indian cuisine on the stage. We have to get the typical American public to be comfortable and cuisine as a cuisine that they want to experience on a daily basis, or when they want to dine out with their client or with their spouse or whatnot. Not just something that they would pass by and have once every month. So that is step number one, and that is being taken care of right now. The second thing is, then it comes to the whole QSR story. So for QSR, there is actually there is now about 16 to 17 companies which have launched brands which are trying to get that spot of the next Chipotle or the next Taco Bell. Unfortunately, I have to say none has been successful so far. They've been more successful in West Coast than East Coast. There is a couple of companies in the West Coast who's doing much better. And that typically is because West Coast has more understanding of Indian cuisine because of all the tech presence there, and the people who are serving those tech businesses are of Indian origin. One thing is they have to come up with these QSRs need to come up with a formula. And whoever cracks that formula, what is going to be that formula in terms of the menu? That would be the key. Now you have to say, do I go pan-Indian or do I go regional? So that's the number one question to be answered. If it is pan-Indian, then what are those 1, 2, 3, 4 dishes that I'm going to pick from various regions and make up my menu, which is my formula, right? Or do I go just typical region? Do I just go, am I just a kati roll outfit? Or am I just a kebab and naan outfit? So unfortunately, not one restaurant has got it right in that regard. For example, I was in San Francisco last year, and I was in a restaurant which is very successful, by the way. The restaurant is named Dosa, but it serves chicken tikka masala. Now that's really unfortunate. You see what I'm saying? So you have to say what is, yes, you will be successful for the next 2 to 3 years, 5 years serving that, but it's not going to take you for the long journey. You have to really define what is your forte, what is your formula. If you want to be pan-Indian, then be pan-Indian. Pick up the 6 or 7 top cuisines within India and have 2 dishes from each cuisine and show integrity to those cuisines. So once that question is answered, it's a matter of time that there will be an Indian QSR, which I'm not looking forward to.
Actually, that's why I asked the question, sir. Thank you.
I'm not a big fan of QSRs, but yeah, I mean, it serves some needs, I guess.
We had a couple of more students who had raised hands.
Thank you.
May I?
Yes, please. Who's that?
Good evening, Chef. My name is Bal. I'm a student of School of Hospitality of Shulni University. So my question to you is that, so are you in hotels and as well as good upscale restaurants, are you moving towards immunity boosting food? Because we are shifting towards clinical hospitality.
It's a very good question, Aditya. It's a wonderful question. Now, I don't know if I think Chaitali did mention this as part of my bio in the beginning, that one of my interests is foods that heal, or medicinal food. So food really is a big, and I come from Kerala, so you have Ayurveda kind of rooted into our veins. Food is a great medicine, and I don't know if it'll happen as early as we see now. Now, currently the focus is to get businesses back on track. But once all this dust settles, I wouldn't be surprised to see some chefs taking the initiative and incorporating foods that heal or foods that boost your immunity. Food has always been medicine for centuries in the world. But it's going to take a little more research. It's going to take integrity of ingredients, which are not unknown factors in the West. In the West, people are comfortable with organic or seeking organic, and the source is there, the availability is there. Chefs have done it before. In India, it's still a big challenge. People don't understand the concept of integrity of ingredients in most cases, unfortunately. And so does some of the Indian chefs when they travel abroad. For example, if a certain chef said that to make my makhani sauce, I need a certain type of tomato, not a concept that Indian chefs would buy, or general managers would buy, by the way. If a chef ever said that. But in the West, that is a known concept. You will see Italian chefs all the time saying that to make this particular dish, I want this particular type of garlic. So once that's done, that level of specificity happens in cooking, it's a matter of before we have some kind of food as medicine into the mainstream dining areas.
Thank you for answering my question, Chef.
Thank you, Aditya.
Do we have anybody else? Akanksha, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, ma'am. Hello, Chef.
Hello, Akanksha.
So I have a question, a personal question that being a chef, which is your favorite cuisine and the favorite wine that you would like to pair with it?
So it's a very difficult question for me to answer. Which is your favorite cuisine? But I don't know if I have a favorite cuisine in terms of region. What I love to cook with is seafood. I do like to cook with a lot of fish and shellfish. It comes from my upbringing in the coast. I grew up eating, grilling crabs and eating at the age of 6 by myself, by the way. We would make a fire pit and throw the crabs that we got from the river and try to eat it with some salt. So I tend to navigate towards and be comfortable with cuisines that incorporate a lot of seafood. Hence, the coastal cuisines of India, I'm big on. The Mediterranean cuisine, I'm quite big on. So if I get a nice piece of fish, I'm very happy. As far as drinks pairing go, these days I do more non-wine beverage pairing than wine pairing. I prefer to go home limeades and lemonades. I'm a big citrus person. I told that earlier. If I have a nice plate of fish and a great citrus drink, I'm happy.
Thank you, Chef.
Do we have any more questions? Anybody? I think Ashfer, we've had a array of questions being answered. So, Tanisha, are you there?
Tanisha, you're muted.
Yes. So I think that was the end of the Q&A session. And it was indeed a very, very interesting session. But before wrapping up, I would like to call Chef Mukherjee to express gratitude to Chef Ashfer for such an insightful session.
Thank you, Tanisha.
Hi. Yeah. Am I audible? Am I visible?
Yes, you are, Chef.
Okay.
And you have a nice background.
Okay. Right. I think I won't take much of time. We always take away a few important things from such a long webinar. And my pick from this webinar is what Chef mentioned about is to be carelessly careful. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yes. So let's say hi. Let's say hi to carelessly careful. But I think you need to be very confident and very much strong on your basics to be carelessly careful. Because
100%.
yeah, you cannot make a mistake in being carelessly careful. So I'm taking back this from this webinar. So as I told, few things we can take back. There's so many things, of course. So, and let me thank Chef Ashfer Biju and the organizers, that is Faces, Ihm Bangalore. I thank my principal, all my students. Yes, I always say students come first. And then my faculty. So all my students and my faculty and all the students and faculty from other institutes who have joined in this. It has become sort of national webinar, and we'll have more such sessions soon. And thanks for your time, Chef, in your busy schedule, because I just heard that you are getting busy, so which is good signs for any chef or any professional as such. And so look into, might be another session with you sometime later, if we can, on some other topic, it can be. So we'll be surely be in touch with you, and Anjali and Rajesh are already in touch with you, and you belong to the same institute. That's wonderful. And yeah, I'll end this small thank you talk with sharing a small fact that no, it's all connected. As you, Anjali, and Rajesh are connected, similarly, me and Pradeep are also connected. We are classmates from IHM Kolkata.
Wow.
So,
Don't share the year. You'll give it
no. We never share the year, you know.
Chef Biju, are you trying to tell us that we are fossils? But I'd like to get a word in over here. Chef Krishnendu, thank you very much for inviting me and my students. And Biju, goes without saying that it was so wonderful hearing you. And I'd definitely like to say thank you, Anjali. You moderated it so well. And since I couldn't get an opportunity to thank wonderful Chinmaya the other day for moderating Parvinder Bali, once again, I see you there in the audience, Chinmaya. You did a great job.
Oh, right. So thank you. And I think, Anjali, we should say good day and good night.
Yeah. Yes,
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. This is wonderful. I'm happy to have added some value to your platform. Thank you, Anjali, for having invited me. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chef Krishnendu, for your kind words. Thank you, Mr. Majumdar. I don't know the principal if he's still around. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the students. And yes, we are very busy, and which is a really good thing to have. But I am very accessible on social media, so please feel free to. I have 2 Instagram accounts, so you can message me. I may not message back immediately, but I will get to it. You could either find me on just my main ID, which is Ashfer Biju, or I have an ID called Chef's Day Out, which is basically all my stuff that I do, which is non-cooking.
Biju, would it be perfect to ask you for your email ID, if you can just tell us?
Yes, it's just it says ashfar.biju@tajhotels.com. My first name dot last name @tajhotels.com.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Taj Hotels with an S.
Yes,
so
of course.
To stay connected. It's always wonderful to hear from students. And if you need any assistance in terms of knowing what's going on in this side of the world, please feel free. Thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, Ashur. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm ending the meeting. Or who's the host? Chetali, if you could end the meeting.